Welcome to the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast, the show dedicated to bring you the news from the oil patch deep in the heart of Texas, with your hosts, Ryan Ray and Josh Shelton.
And we're back with the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast. This is episode 132. 132. I'm your host, Josh Shelton. My friend and co-host, Ryan Ray. Ryan, looks like Nate is headed into the lake. Luckily for me and you, we are not. So it's a great Monday.
Don't speak
great
too soon, Josh.
Pop the confetti.
We got 19 more people until
call the
you guys
fight.
have to join me.
It's over. There's no reason people to go rate and review. We've hit 200.
All the reason in the world.
Yeah, there's no reason to go hit 225.
All the reason in the world.
I have to buy one towel for Nate. I can't afford to buy a towel for Josh and myself as well. So we don't. What we do not want. What we do not want is another 19 or 5-star reviews at this point.
You're giving me a towel?
A towel cloth. Phrasing there.
Still giving me clothing, dude.
I mean,
under the terms of my contract, that means that I'm free.
Yes. In the spirit of Christmas cheer, we would appreciate bringing the closers a 5-star review, Energy Week a 5-star review, any of those lovely podcasts that I'm on. A 5-star review would be lovely.
The Texas Oil and Gas.
But the Texas Oil and Gas podcast, we've gotten 200 and something, so
206.
We don't need any more. We don't need any
225.
We don't need any
at least until second week of January.
Yeah, after December 31st. Because see, I'm not going to probably even check it anymore this year. I don't know why I would.
I'm going to check it every single day.
We did hit 200, which means Nate is going into the lake. We're making the lake great again, or whatever you want to say. The stickers are ordered. They will be in. If you left us a 5-star rating review, you send me a screenshot of it and your address. I will mail you one as soon as those stickers get in. I am back from China and vacation and traveling and all that jazz, so I will get out a sticker. We also got some shirts. We didn't get any printed up, Josh. I went with the on-demand method. So TexasOilAndGasPodcast.com/plunge is it, Plunge. We'll link to that in the show notes. If you want to get a shirt, I think we have some hoodies and stuff on there as well. You can get one ordered to celebrate this occasion. And we might have a Christmas shirt coming out as well. I will be posting on that about LinkedIn by the end of the week. If we do a Christmas shirt, you can pick those up through the website or LinkedIn or whatever. Now, Josh, I have a couple other things to talk about before we read these reviews from our listeners. One, we don't break news on this podcast, but I feel like this is the appropriate time to do that. And what happened is me, being a man of the people, was hanging out with some folks during Thanksgiving, and they're talking about how much they love the podcast, which, I mean, what else are they going to say? Right, obviously. And they love what we do, this, that, and the other. And they said that they found out about this guy named Sergio Chapa from our podcast. And then these words were uttered, probably for the first and last time in humanity. I love Sergio Chapa. And I was like, wow, that's the first time I think I've ever heard that. I love Sergio Chapa. So we can now officially say that one person on this earth appreciates and loves Sergio Chapa. Probably will never hear it again, Sergio. We hope you enjoy that. And to show that I'm a man, people, I said, do you want to talk to Sergio? And he goes, yeah, that'd be great. So I pick up my phone. I text Sergio, like, hey, I found your one fan. Would you like to talk to him? Sergio takes forever to respond. I try to call him. Sergio doesn't respond. And like 2 hours later, Sergio calls me back, like, hey, I can talk now. Now, Josh, if that were me and you were like, hey, someone wants to talk to you, what would have happened? You would have called me and I would have answered, right?
Yeah, you would have answered, and you would have talked to him and intermingled with the people. Yeah,
right. Okay, so so Sergio, you did have a fan. I can't say if he is or not, which did bring this up. Someone said, hey, can I send you some swag? And you promote ourselves on the show. I said, of course, swag, but what's our favorite type of swag? Cash money, right? Cash money is our favorite type of swag. So feel free to send the swag again. That came up over the holidays as well. China, I put out a thing on LinkedIn. There will be a China podcast. When that drops, we'll probably put it in this stream so you guys can know where to find that at. But that, hopefully, we're working on the details of the China podcast. You'll hear about my experience and everything else that's going on in the land of China. Finally, end of the year, we're working on our schedule. I know we're considering doing some recaps, some predictions, and some thought shows. If you have some input on that, you said, hey, you know what? I'd like to maybe give my opinion or 2 cents on what happened this year or what we're looking for next year. We are putting together a couple end-of-the-year shows, so we'd be happy to hear that. Reach out to producer Nate through the website, TexasOilAndGasPodcast.com, or you can get his email or LinkedIn in the show notes. We have 3 reviews to read, I believe, Josh, right? First is from Get Nate in the Lake, 5-star review from Taylor Street G. Hey guys, great podcast. I'm an analyst and consultant in the industrial manufacturing space. I'm forecasting major data. Forecasting major data sets like oil prices and the rig count, and analyzing a lot of data for Fortune 500 folks and for numerous trade associations. You guys really help me interpret all of this data that I'm constantly staring at, and it's been very beneficial in my work. I have several clients impressed by my knowledge of the oil and gas industry, and in particular, and you all play a big part of that, so thank you. So first off, thank you, but if you send them our way, we won't tell your secret, right? Like, if you send them to our show, we'll tell them that you told us that. So we'll get more listeners, we'll get more reviews, and then we'll give you the praise. So let's put that out there. Ryan, I think if you bring Josh to China next time, it will help move the trade deal along. Now, that's a shot fired. That's unnecessary. Like, that was unnecessary. That got stung a little bit. I think they would appreciate a fellow communist tagging along with you. Oh, well,
Josh is a leftist.
That makes sense then. Okay, so bring the commie along to deal with the commies. That makes sense. Josh, I'm just playing. Great enunciation, by the way. Nate, best of luck, man. Josh, it feels like you're getting fans here, and I'm not really happy about this.
Hey, well, look, they want me to go to China to get some deals done. It looks like some of those trade deals got backed off after you left. And
yeah, Trump ruined all the foundation I laid. I had the democracy reigning free in Hong Kong. The Chinese announced they're rolling back tighten up the AP laws, and then Trump goes and does Trumpian things. So, but yeah, that's a good point. Bringing along a fellow commie, Nate. I didn't think about that. I probably should have done that. Next one is Frankie R, new to the podcast, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. It's nice to stay up to date with the news of the Permian, especially being a field sales representative in the area. Keep up the great work. Looking forward to more episodes. And Jason from the Footy. I would have said hoodie, but it's got an F, so Footy.
Jason the Foodie.
Jason the Foodie. I can't read. I can't announce it.
A chef of some kind.
Okay, Jason the Foodie. Oh, see, Nate's really smart. Good, knowledgeable host, smart reviews of Texas oil and gas and gas news, and great guest. Thank you all. Thank you for hitting 200. Josh and I do really appreciate it. It was our Christmas gift, so if you love the show, be sure to share it with your friends, family, coworker, children, priest, and all of Josh Communist buddy.
Enemies, anybody. Well, Ryan, there was a couple of articles that came out this week. One from Hart Energy is FERC greenlights more Texas LNG projects. Now, we talked a little bit about some of these projects, but one of the things that we overlook often in the industry is that these projects sometimes have to go through 7 or 8 phases of approval before they actually begin construction. So as I was reading through this article from Hart Energy, it mentions that they are doing free. There's some free trade agreements that need to be made that have to be put in place. Final investment decisions called FIDs that they're looking at, and so they are needing to get what one company said was 2/3 of the proposed facility's capacity needs to be set in agreements, offtake agreements, before they're going to proceed even to the final investment decision. So even if they get 2/3 of their capacity filled, they're not even sure that it's going to be a good financial move at that point. So if you recall on some of the, maybe in the last podcast or the one before, there were 3 to 4 LNG projects in Texas: Rio Grande LNG, Inova LNG, and one in Port Brownsville. Pretty major projects that they were working on, and it seemed like it was a done deal. But going through this article, it's really not. They have a lot of work to do with the volatility of the market. Those things could be pushed off some. They did get approval, but it's going to be interesting to see where they land.
Yeah, and Josh, for the listeners who don't listen to Energy Week podcast, we have on the API Chief Economist Dean Foreman once a month, and they put out a quarterly report, and in that quarterly report, they track the probability of these projects getting done. Now, I'm going back, I just quickly pulled this up while we're talking here. I'm going back to their Q1, I think, from this year, and it looks as just a quick look over. It's kind of hard to compare this on the fly here, but it looks like the ones that are mentioned in this article as of Q1 this year were given the likely rating, if I'm reading this correctly. from the API. They're not the only group that does this, but they're one of them. So just a tidbit for listeners, if you want to see what other projects are under FERC review and where they're at in that stage, API has that, and we can link to that in the show notes. But yeah, Josh, it is interesting. These are multi-phase projects where you have to get a lot of approval by different government entities and anything like that. And when you go back to the Port of Corpus Christi we talked about a few weeks ago, that was part of the problem way back, 2 years ago it is now, needing government approval, trying to get this stuff done. And I haven't heard exactly where the full shakedown of all that came out, but it seems like that some of the concerns are around getting stuff approved, getting it done. Final thing I'll say is while I was in China, this LNG topic came up a lot. And while there was some disagreements over exactly how this would play long term, this is one of the things that from the Chinese side seemed to be a way to balance the so-called trade deficit. And so that's something to consider as we move along. We do not have a free trade agreement with China, at least the last time I checked, we don't. And so that's something we need to get done because it makes them, if I remember correctly, they got to import it from like South Korea or something like that. I can't remember how they were explaining it worked from their side, but we don't have at least an energy free trade agreement, and that's something that we need to get done to make it easier for us to work with the Chinese on getting this product to them.
This might be a little off subject, Ryan, but there was another article. Putin and President Xi oversee launch of landmark Russian gas pipeline to China. So there's this just came out. They're working on a pretty major deal, gas from Siberia to Northeast China. And so I don't know how that will affect some of the contracts that were struck with China for natural gas in the past, and kind of what the plans are in the future with these LNG export facilities. But this is not something that I follow or track, so this may have been something that's been in the works for a while. But I saw it came out earlier and just was curious how it would affect on the U.S. side some of the natural gas LNG export intentions for.
Yeah, right. And when you look at these big projects that require multi-phase government approval, it's not uncommon to see a lot of them, and a lot's a relative term. It's not uncommon to see a handful of names out there, and then those names fall off, and then they go to somewhere else, and then a smaller percentage, again, smaller is a relative term, a small percentage of them actually get pushed through. And the LNG market, as you know, is long-term, 20, 25-year contracts. So it would be beneficial for us to get them done. But, also, it's for perspective, we probably don't, I'm not an LNG expert. I'm sure we have some listeners who know more about it than I do, but you probably don't need them all to be done either, right? We probably don't have the capacity, or the market doesn't demand them all to be require them all to be done at this point either. So you have some government bureaucracy in the way, and you probably also have some market demand that's maybe thought to be there or not there, or companies strategically placing themselves. You can think about like this, and I don't, again, no inside information here, but it's not unlike a company to say, you know what, we're going to build this our own facility over here to get their competitor or someone else to do it for them and get them a better deal, because it's not really what they wanted to do, but they kind of needed to put out the good faith effort to get whatever it is they actually wanted done. Does that make sense?
Yep. Well, there's been a couple of things that's come out, reports that are, I guess, feeding into the narrative of natural gas market is struggling right now, which I think everyone knows it's a tight market. But there's a report that came out with the Houston Chronicle where the guy is basically Jordan. He's basically arguing that the natural gas state is actually worse than what we think it is. He mentions that the prices have dropped about 35% in the past 12 months on the natural gas side. He does make a quick mention to the oil prices, but he's looking at the future for oil and for gas in particular, and he's not seeing a upside to this. So he's actually saying that it's looks like it's going to be a long-term struggle for gas, especially with some of the environmental things on the flaring side. And then there's just so much of it. His views are dismal. What he says is a sad state. He's looking at Cabot stock prices down 33%. You got several other companies that are struggling to keep afloat. So, the thing is it always depends on what's going on in the market. Just one or two deals with these export facilities and some pipeline infrastructure, and you might have a different story going on.
Yeah, well, first off, let's point out, thank you, Jordan Bloom. We've been waiting for Sergio to give us a Cabot oil and gas update for like 3 years now. So thank you for actually coming through and doing that. It's good to see someone's working at the Chronicle. Outside of that, I think the other thing is, as we've seen, the rigs have fallen off in the Permian, which ultimately will help natural gas because you have less natural gas production when the Permian production goes down because there's gas in the Permian. So as we go into next year, where does the rig count go back to, and how much gas comes back online? That's kind of the trend to follow, because if let's just say the rig count stayed flat wherever it's at today. I don't know where it's at today, but let's just say it stayed flat at 600 rigs or 700 rigs or whatever it's at. If it stays flat, then the natural gas production will eventually go down. Again, you got to time the ducts and all other jazz, but eventually the natural gas production for the Permian will level off or go down at some point. And then how does that tie in with overall natural gas prices? I think that's going to be the interesting thing to watch there, because if the Permian for some reason oil surges to $100 a barrel and rig count blows through the roof and this, that, and the other, well then that's definitely going to put a whooping on the natural gas thing. But the other thing is, I've been hearing more, and I've been gone out of the country for so much, it's kind of hard to know what's fact, what's fiction, but I have been hearing some people say that the commission, the Rail Commission, is going to tighten up the ability for these companies to flare off the natural gas. If that happens, it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the market moving forward, because if you're burning it off now, you're not making anything on it. If you put it in a pipeline, well, then it would seem to increase the what's going into stocks, and which would seem to hurt the price more, at least at a surface level. Maybe I'm missing something there, but that would seem to be what happens.
Well, there's a article that came out, Drilling Info, which is now in Veris. I'm sure many of you know that. Gastrol meets expectation forecast changes bring volatility. So this article says that natural gas storage inventories decreased 28 billion cubic feet for the week ending November 22nd. So it makes me wonder, Ron, if what you mentioned just a moment ago is already happened. So some of these storage inventories are starting to be depleted, and with that, the supply will start to go down. So they said that they were expecting, the market expectation was a draw of 27. So it's an extra billion cubic feet of storage was used than what's projected. So you just wonder if that will continue. But also with the flaring, the question that I have is since there's so much of it, I guess it's the cost of transport really that has to be factored in, because if supply starts to go down, they don't actually have to go and work to produce this gas. It's there. They just have to stop flaring it, and the supply will be taken care of. But I think the issue would be the transport, because if they stop flaring it, it costs more money. And it makes me wonder too, how competitive could these companies be if they built that into the cost of the gas? Like if these flaring emission rules go in place, will they be able to up the cost in order to accommodate those transport costs into the gas, or will that cause them to be priced out of the market?
Yeah, and I think that's going to depend a lot on the regulation and what the regulation says, and who writes the regulation, and it's one of those things where everyone wants regulation, and then they get it. It's like, well, that regulation sucks, and so it's gonna be interesting to see how it works out on the Intervis drilling info thing. I'm gonna call them drilling info until they tell me not to. I see what they're saying, but also if you look at their chart, their 2019, 2020 inventory rate is right in the middle of the 5-year average. So it's not like we're sitting outside the 5-year average. So I don't really expect it to be much impact moving forward. This is one of those articles, and we have to remember now, as oil and gas people, drilling info was kind of built for us. It feels like a one time, but now they're really heavy into the trading stuff. And this feels like it's an article more for the traders, where you read it, you go, oh wow, price volatility, and you look at it, you're like, well, okay, yeah, there's some volatility, but for what we do, there's the price hasn't moved enough to do anything. So, but if I'm looking at the chart, their end of the year storage in April, where they're predicting it to be, will be right in line with where it's been for the last 5 years, which is, no real change. You might see in January and February, it looks like they might get a little bit above the 5-year range on the draw, but basically it's the same. So that's really interesting to watch. Just from a drilling info standpoint, Josh, is how much of their stuff is really more for traders than it is for us old folks and the thing. But hey, before Sergio gets on here, so we're gonna pick on him before he gets on because that's just a fun thing to do. Did you see the article he put out about opening the national forest to drill in more oil and gas?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see who the group that's opposing it is? The group is, this is from Sergio's piece. One of the groups fighting the proposal is the Arizona-based environmental group Center for Biological Diversity. Compared to the Center for Biological Uniformity, I mean, I'm not a biologist. I don't have a college degree. I'm not that smart, but is it that kind of a given when you're talking about biology? Unless you're talking about a very, 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 very small data set that it's all diverse. I mean, you and Nate are the smart guys here.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think what they're trying to say is they want to preserve as many species as possible so that there's more diversity. But
I want to start a sister organization for them and call it the Center for Food Edibility.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. It's just a funny name, Center for Biological Diversity. It's like, well, right, yeah.
It should be like Species Preservation or something like that.
Species Preservation Society or something like that, or hey, if you kill off this thing, you mess up everything.com. Something weird like that. That would be, something like that. But it just cracked me up. Center for Biological Diversity.
Biological diversity.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hey. But anyway, I was just curious because I just read that. And I was like, I told Nate, I said, that's just the funniest name to me. I don't know why. They did that. Now, to be fair, the let's see here. There was a quote in here that Sergio put, and where is it at? This is from the Center for Biological Diversity. We need to be cutting our greenhouse gas emissions in half over the next decade to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, not opening up more land to fossil fuel extraction. This is going the wrong direction. Now, Josh, what all goes into greenhouse gases? What all makes those up? Do you know?
It's a bunch of stuff, I believe. One of them's cow farts. I know that.
That's what I'm about to say. Goat burps and cow farts is part of it. Let's see.
Human breath would be CO2. So
right. So let's see here. Greenhouse gas is the gas that absorbs and emits. Let's see here. Okay. So the primary greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone. Without the greenhouse gases, that goes on. Okay. So, yeah. So is Sergio reporting, and he's not, but are these people suggesting that we should basically get rid of the animals because they emit greenhouse gases?
No,
they're not. Okay, they're not suggesting it. Okay, you don't think so? You don't think
but they fart so much.
So, anyways, it's just funny when people say stuff like that. It's like, well, right. Then, so the natural question is what do you do with all the natural greenhouse gases that are emitted? So, but anyways, if we don't get over them, Josh, if we do not cut them in half for the next decade, the worst impacts of climate change will be upon us. And I want to put it out here right now, Josh. I'm going to put it out here right now that we will not reduce them by half, and nothing will happen in 10 years. I will put whatever dollar that's reasonable for someone to take me up on that bet. Do you think anyone will take me up on it? I mean, I can't put money I don't have, obviously, but if I said as a baller like Josh Shelton, I might put up $10 million. But for a chump like me, if I put up 10 G's, you think someone would take me up on that?
Highly doubtful. Call the biological diversity folks. They might have the pockets to put up a little more even.
Well, right. And, if they're right, it wouldn't matter. So just pass over the 10 G's at that point to me. So anyways, I thought that was funny that we got to cut them in half. Of course, we didn't. There's no mention of which ones they want us to actually cut. So,
we talk about that a good bit. But there was a book we referenced a couple of times by Epstein, and he makes mention that in general, what people see is that the human impact on the environment is basically evil, and so anything that humans do is bad. The fact that cow farts and all of that have an impact, well, that doesn't matter because they're not human. And I don't know what the motivation behind that is, and I don't fully understand it, but I definitely see it. Anything that, so if all these animals are causing CO2 or global warming or whatever, it's fine. But human activity, if it has any impact, it's evil. And I'm not even willing to acknowledge that the impact is significant enough to warrant the measures they're trying to take.
Yeah, well, the final thing I'd say on this is that, I am more than willing and happy to have the discussion. I have kind of mixed thoughts on all this, as if we talked offline. What I have found, Josh, is that the people that are hardliners on this, they actually don't want to think through the issue, and yet they want to call anyone who denies it a denier, and that's what's frustrating. I was talking to someone the other day. I said, well, how do you know the models are right? And I kind of explained, kind of the narrative about, if you've got a rifle and the target's off a little bit, at 100 yards you might hit it, but at 1,000,000 yards or whatever, you'll miss it by a long way. And I kind of used that logic to say that if the model's wrong, then the climate models will be wrong. It just kind of walked through that. And the response I got was more or less as well, I just kind of trust these people that are doing it. And it's like, well, who are these people? Do you know them? Do you actually study their work? Or because some random organization said that they're the best, that then you therefore assume they're the best? And why do you assume it was the UN in this case? Why do you assume that the UN is good? The UN has done all kinds of terrible things, and so it's really kind of frustrating because it's like, well, I'm happy to have these. We will take on anyone that wants to come on this show and have a very lovely, nice, friendly thing. But what I found is, sadly, Josh, is that when you ask those questions, the questions that actually matter to this debate, those are the questions that we don't want answers to, because if you have to answer those questions, it's really hard. It's funny, Josh, when you have to answer the hard questions, no one wants to answer the hard questions. What they want to do is they want to answer the easy questions and then consider everyone else some stupid redneck who can't answer it. But when the stupid redneck asks the hard question, well, hey, stupid redneck, go sit in the back corner. You're not smart enough to answer that. Well, and so that's to me, that's the frustrating thing. So if we want to sit down and talk about it, I'd love to, but sadly I won't. Enough about stupid climate change. Let's get our man Sergio on.
Okay, we have our good friend Sergio Chapa with the Houston Chronicle visiting us today. Sergio, it's been a little while, man. How'd your Thanksgiving go? How are you doing? What's the industry like right now from your side?
It was good. It was good. I was able to drove down to see family in the Rio Grande Valley. Caught up on all my podcasts. I feel like I'm all current now with current events. There's a lot going on in the oil and gas industry right now, actually. A lot of stuff we're writing about here is a lot about technology, which y'all have been talking about too. Y'all been hitting on that. And a lot of people talking about tech in the oil field these days.
Before we get any further, Sergio, we talked on Thanksgiving, and I pointed this out to the listeners earlier. I had someone tell me, quote, "I love Sergio Chapa," and I was like, I can get you to the man. I can put you in front of this person, and you let them down. So
I was shopping at a Walmart in Harlingen, trying to get those Black Friday deals, man. Sorry.
I was out amongst the people, doing what I do. So just
materialism run amok, But, got to remember the real reason for the season, Ryan.
Well, to talk to celebrities like yourself. So, and one thing, Sergio, thank you. We forgot to mention this earlier. We were talking before you came on. You did send us a note last week, and we'll transition to this. That ExxonMobil did not. You did not have an error. We asked last week about, hey, Exxon, there's nothing here. So walk us through this week's drilling down, and then any more comment on the Exxon. Obviously, there's no error there. There's just nothing going on. Any insight as to why that is the case?
Right. Now, as you know, every Monday the Houston Chronicle publishes a weekly column called Drilling Down. And we look at the top 10 companies and the top 10, drilling permits around the state. This statewide look. And, a couple of weeks back, we did one, pre-Thanksgiving one. And and every week for this whole entire year, you've consistently seen, XTO Energy, which is the kind of, the shale arm of ExxonMobil, finally 20, 30, 35 drilling permits. And you've consistently seen that all year. And curiously enough, I think it was a couple weeks back, they went 1 week with only filing one drilling permit. So, and that was for a vertical well in Andrews County. So they took a week off, but you know what? Just looking ahead, I still say that doesn't faze them at all. They're still on track to become listed, ranked as the number one driller in Texas. So their status is not affected there. And that was not an error. That was not an oversight.
Well, we've never thought you made an error, but we had to ask just because it was so. I was saying we weren't like accusing you of an error because you do good work. It was just so shocking to see that, because you kind of see them. They were doubling up folks for a while, so it was kind of a curious thing. Now, we do have to ask about the drill down. It does feel like you're taking slight shots at the Barnett because you're like, oh, hey, they've got one well coming. Or last week it was, I think there's 4 that are planned. We didn't even get a permit. It's like there's 4 that are planned. Should we take that personal up here at the Barnett?
No, I don't think so at all. We're keeping a close eye on things there. There's Barnett is still there as a shale play. Obviously, they're more active shale plays, but they're still in the game. They're still in the game, somewhat.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about an article that you put out back in November 7th, earlier this year. More data than oil bandwidth poised to become next bottleneck in the Permian Basin. And this is an interesting thing here, Sergio, because when I was in China, the talk about Huawei and 5G and all that was something that came up. Of course, not in this context, but this is the discussion that's interesting because it's relevant to the oil and gas industry, but it's also a larger discussion that's going on. It feels like globally about what we're going to do with bandwidth issues and how to handle that. So, what's going on in the Permian that might be different than what we see, and how are they tackling some of those challenges?
No, definitely. It's definitely an issue that's on the horizon. I first heard about this, the first time I heard people talking about it people have been talking about it for a while, but one of the executive vice presidents at Chevron spoke about this very issue at Summer Nate all the way back in August. And she says for the future that they want as a company, these smart rigs, these automation, digitalization, like for the oil field, it's all incumbent. It all requires bandwidth, and nobody thinks about it when they're out there. Nobody thinks about it, here, back here in Houston. But then, when you're out in the field, it's very much reality. You've got cell phones with no service, and then you look at these cell phone company maps, and they show all these areas of West Texas as red or pink or yellow or whatever the colors, like we have coverage. But when you get out there on the ground, and I know you know this, Ryan, you've been out there. I mean, on the coverage map, it shows that they have coverage. But when you're out there and you leave the interstate or you travel, off the highway a little bit, boom, gone. And that's the problem that these, oil companies or these operators are encountering out in the Permian. And so, as the industry becomes more dependent on digitalization and automation, they need that bandwidth. And so, Chevron is taking a leadership role in this and talking about like the need to take maybe a consortium approach or to partner with government, to get that bandwidth out there in the Permian Basin, out there where it's needed. Now, I'll tell you what, in the Gulf of Mexico, what they did a while back is they partnered with like the majors like BP and Shell, and they built a fiber optic ring, on the floor of the Gulf of Mexico, to provide connectivity to the offshore oil rigs. something, along that scale in the Permian Basin, though, you're talking like you need, federal, state, local permits, everything like that. I mean, it would be like an endeavor that would cost billions and billions of dollars, or erecting like all these towers all over the landscape, again, billions and billions of dollars. So, and with the Permian Basin as the nation's largest and most active oil field, and it will continue to be so. They're going to have to deal with this issue at some point. So this is a really important point that they raised. And, there's a number of companies stepping into that space to provide, solutions to the problem. In the story, I talked to a company in San Antonio, TotalCom, and, they have trailers and kind of like these mobile homes, and they provide temporary internet, on site. And then there's a company named Infrastructure Networks here in Houston, also doing, these cell phone towers and using edge computing to reduce the data that you need to send. You don't need to, the computer does the thinking on the ground and only sends the data that it needs to send to the server. So if you're sending less data, you need less bandwidth. You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah. So here's a question, Sergio. So some of these companies are investing, Chevron, Exxon, they're investing in some of these cell towers. Do you see these bigger companies partnering with each other and going in an investment strategy for 5G, or would you see these bigger companies trying to keep it more exclusive so that some of these other companies wouldn't benefit from their, I say, pretty sizable investments into the 5G network?
So, I mean, I don't think the discussions are there yet. The thing that Chevron raised is they showed an indication that they're willing to do that. That consortium approach that you talked about worked in the Gulf of Mexico, and they recognize that. And it sounds like they're open to doing a consortium like that, but onshore, to bring that kind of connectivity, and it would benefit everyone. You pay into the system, and and you get the benefits of it. Whether it just ends up being majors or large independents or small companies, maybe they just pay a fee or something. I don't know. That remains to be seen. Or if they're going to benefit, or collaborate with government. I mean, there are programs like the USDA and different various state agencies. They have programs to build cell phone towers in rural areas and to bring internet to rural areas. And there's even some that just specify for like emergency, 911 responders. You can piggyback on those towers and build them out, for business. I mean, the tower is already there. What's adding another little, rod on top,
right?
Or at least see. So we'll see.
So we've talked a lot about obviously companies and which ones are going to make it, which ones are not. You got a piece on oil and gas industry turns to AI for billions in savings, and this is something that's it was kind of the talk of the town. It felt like maybe this time last year, or I don't know, 2 years ago, kind of runs together now that big data, AI, all this stuff is going to kind of revolutionize the world, and then it kind of, I don't want to say died, but the hype kind of went away. It felt like back then, we were so early on in the conversations that we didn't even fully understand what all it could do. What's kind of changed? Because you've covered this for quite some time. What's kind of changed in maybe the year or two you've been covering this, and where are we at now as we look at these new smart technologies to be deployed in the industry?
No, you're exactly right. A lot of people talked about this, but now it's actually physically here. I mean, the digital oil field is actually physically here. This partnership between Baker Hughes and C3 AI and Microsoft, it's like a three-way alliance. One of the things that they found out is that a majority of operators are already using, the Microsoft Azure, platform. And then when Baker Hughes and C3 AI, the artificial intelligence company, when they did their joint venture announced their joint venture earlier this year, there was like a no-brainer for them to if most of their customers are already using Microsoft, why not Microsoft Azure? Why not bring them into it and make the technology play better with that platform? So I mean, they described it as a cloud agnostic cloud agnostic platform, but then now it's specifically tailored to Microsoft Azure. At least this one product is. So, I mean, it's just good to see this, because we've been writing about that this is coming, and now it feels like it's actually here, and this is actually going to happen, and we'll see how it changes the industry and how it transforms workflows and processes. How much it can improve production and exploration. That we'll see.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago on the show was, if you're, Sergio Chapa E&P, you have your employees and your technology, and you kind of do your things your way. Us at R2 Global, we might work for you, and we might like the way you do it. We might not. It doesn't really matter. You're the client. But we also work for Josh Shelton E&P and XTO. And so actually the vendors on some level have a lot of interesting things to say that can contribute to how these companies become more efficient. And as we go through this, taking data, interpreting data, best practices, I'm curious to see if there will be a pivot from the E&P companies to go to their vendors and say, okay, you know what? You guys are actually working for all these people. Advise us on the things that maybe we should deploy this technology on, because there's plenty of times we go to work for a client and what they do is probably not the best way to do it, but they're not necessarily asking our opinion on what the best way to do it is. They're just asking us to do it. And so have you felt like through this technological change that maybe the companies are more open to sharing data or hearing outside opinion on how to increase efficiencies?
The ones that I hear the most about collaboration and data sharing are like the European companies. It really hasn't caught on yet here with the American operators and E&P companies. You hear about data collaboration with like the Norwegian companies all the time, and even the French companies, but with here in the United States, that concept hasn't quite caught on. I mean, everyone's so guarded here with intellectual property and proprietary data, but in places like Norway, like all the E&P companies have to file that data with the government, and it's like all their drilling data, all that data ends up open sourced. I mean, anybody can just go in and look and see, how that well was drilled, what the results were and everything. And I don't think that concept is here quite yet. And, and then the other thing I would suspect with service companies and E&Ps, kind of a barrier to that. Wouldn't that be NDAs, non-disclosures, I guess?
Yeah. So obviously some of that stuff is going to be in the spectrum of you can't talk about, but there is some things you can. And, I mean, with the pressure right now that we read about every week, is the industry is struggling, companies are trying to survive. It would seem like now more than ever might be the time to go to folks and say, you know what, we need to make better profits. We have this technology or the ability to deploy this technology. Maybe a shift in strategy is what we need to, if you can save literally billions, if you can save billions or hundreds of millions, then maybe you should rethink your strategy at this point.
No, definitely. That's the whole point of this digital push. Everyone's hoping that they can connect those dots. And they always talk about, the buzzword is breaking the silos, breaking down the silos.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what it is.
Yeah, they sound pretty entrenched, don't they?
Yeah. Well, Sergio, I know we are getting up against the clock here. I think we are going to have you on one more time for the end of the year, hopefully, to do a recap of the biggest stories from at least your perspective of 2019. Let the listeners inside of what you saw. Just before we do that, though, any big takeaways from this year that maybe things that you went from San Antonio to the Chronicle now, you cover the industry different. Just curious, off the cuff here, anything surprised you about this year that you didn't expect, other than all the publicity you got from the show? Not counting that.
Well, that was nice, but it's been a rather tough year for I thought the 2015 downturn was tough, and what I've seen from this year. It's rather reminiscent of 2015 for me. All these, all the companies going with their losses. Well, we call it the shale slump here at the Chronicle. And just trying to do those kind of tales of survival, how companies are adapting, how companies are responding to this, slump in activity. That's been for me like the biggest story or surprise of the year so far. And of course you hear more about it, when we do our top 10 stories at the end of the year. We'll definitely take a deeper dive into that. But yeah, there's a lot of pain out there in the industry, especially for the service companies are taking it the hardest right now.
Well, Sergio, we do give you a hard time. We do appreciate all the work you do. You are the best in the business, and I tell everyone that on the air, off the air, and anyone that will listen to me, we do thank you for all that you do and coming on the show. Hope you have a great Christmas and had a good Thanksgiving, and hopefully get you on one more time before the end of the year to talk about kind of a recap of all the things that you guys covered and what were the biggest stories, and look forward to a good 2020.
Okay, likewise. Glad you're back from China.
Hey, back safely after being detained, so I'm here. Thanks, Sergio.
All right, thank you.
Well, big shout out and thanks to Sergio Chapa for joining us on the podcast today. As always, it was great having him on. Last couple of things I wanted to touch on, Ryan, before we round it up. A couple of issues on the roundup. Texas oil explorers say predictions of growth contradict dire reality. This one that kind of goes into the vein of what we were talking about earlier. Some reports came out from the IEA and the EIA, and both of them predict robust U.S. production growth next year. This article in particular argues that those reports are inaccurate, and they give a few reasons if you want to go and check that out. The general consensus in the market right now is that oil prices will go up slightly next year. There are some that say it'll go up a good bit. Some say that it'll stay the same. But the general consensus is it'll be in between 60 and 65 next year as average. So we see that a good bit. But this article says that the industry is in a little bit worse shape than what the IEA and the EIA are predicting. You have there was an explosion that happened in where was this town at? It was near Texas, east of Houston, early on Wednesday, damaging nearby homes, injuring 3 workers at the site. Some people in the neighborhood and the city said that their windows were shattered when the explosion happened. So pretty major deal. I think the city, Port Neches. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad.
What's funny is Nate and I both looked up how to say it, but we weren't going to tell you because we wanted you to hopefully butcher it. I was hoping you to like Port Nachos or something. That's
Nachos. Did I butcher it?
I heard it. I heard Neches and Nate heard Neches. So somewhere in that spectrum.
Neches, something
tomato,
like
tomato.
That.
Tomato.
You didn't say Nietzsche.
You didn't say Nietzsche. You didn't say nacho, which is really what I was thinking you'd say.
Port Nacho. So anyway, prayers out to those families where the folks were hurt. Hopefully that all gets resolved. And this is a plant that produces synthetic rubber. So the pretty major deal. Necessary plant for sure. So anyway, I hope everyone's okay there. And let's see. I thought I had one more, Ryan, but I'm not seeing it. All I'm seeing is it was his Trump issued the deal to start university lands. They're drilling on it. They're trying to open up some there's reservations, conservation sites where he's trying to open some of those up for oil and gas activity.
Center of Biological Diversity. That's what
there we go.
So if you want to read that piece, go there. The main thing, Josh, you forgot to mention is we have gotten all the 5-star. We don't want 4 stars. We don't want 3 stars. We don't take 2 stars. We definitely don't want 1 stars. So if you're going to leave a review, it has to be 5 stars. That's all we accept. With that being said, spread the Christmas cheer by Energy Week or bring in the closers. There's no need. We have gotten to 200. Thank you so much. We'll link to the shirts in the show notes. So textilgascom.com/polarplunge. I think there's a hoodie and some other stuff. It's just print on demand, so you can get it, wear it around so everyone knows that Nate is getting wet. Josh, how do you say this nicely? We want reviews, but we don't want them now. Like, that's how you say it, right? We want them, but not until January.
No, yes, we want them now.
No, we want them like
all of the reviews right now.
January 1.
Many reviews.
Spread the Christmas cheer to other shows like Energy Week or Bringing the Closers. They would appreciate it. They need some reviews. They don't have nearly as many as this show does. Nate, we are working on... We're going to make some content leading up to this polar plunge, Josh, because it's cold here today. I mean, it's windy. It was 36 this morning. There was ice on the windshield. The wind was blowing. Oh, I couldn't imagine getting in that water come January. Woo!
Yeah, shut it down.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
Let's make Nate great again, and just leave everything else alone.
Josh, you are implying that I became not great.
It's not. You're not going to be great on the day you go in the water. I'm going to say that. Well, listeners, thank you so much. We will have a few more shows to close out the year of regular scheduled programming. We are trying to put together maybe a couple of special shows, recaps and predictions and things like that. So if you want to participate in that, reach out to Nate, and we'll see if we can work you in. And that's it. And until next time, keep climbing.